Hi dear audience, hope you would be fine. In this video we would be discussing about Romanticism in English literature. It started from 1790 to 1837. Before going to forward, I just want to make clarification regarding these dates. Usually it is said that Romanticism started with the publication of the lyrical ballad which was in 1798, and the other the ambiguity the other idea about this date of the Romanticism is that Romanticism ended in 1827 1824 with the death of Keats. But roughly, as you know that such uh, transitional movements do not start over the nights. They do not start with the, they might not be the published with the just publication of a book. They have some tendency, they have some development, some which might be covering over the years. So means Romanticism means the tendency of Romanticism started in English literature nearly about 1790, and it has not ended with the uh, death of Keats. It has been sustaining or continuing to some later on the period. But as in 1837 there was the accession of the Queen Victoria, therefore we roughly takes the count of the Victorian period from 1790 to 1837. But if someone claims or say that Romanticism started from 1798 with the publication of lyrical ballad, that's okay. And if someone ends the cut date of this Romanticism at the 1824 with the death of Keats, that's all right. But we are talking in the journal sense that it started from 1790. It has been culminating since 1790, and it almost ended in 1837, because in 1837 the new tendency of Victorian literature started from that period. So we see that this period has extended from the war with the colonies, means in this in 1776 Great Britain has been fighting against America, and America got independence in 1776. And then the accession of the Queen Victoria. This period is dominant with the wars and economic revolutions, and some others, means that was a disturbing period for England on its own home, and with the other colonies as well. England was in the continual turmoil during this period, produced by political, economic agitation at home in this period, and by the long wars that cover two continents and the wide sea between them. The mighty changes resulting from these causes have been named this period as the Age of Revolution as well. The storm center of all the turmoil at the home and abroad was the French Revolution, means at its own home it was facing such turmoils, and while in the France there was the French Revolution. So England could not maintain herself out of the influence of French Revolution, as the major agenda of the French Revolution was eternity, equality, and fraternity. So those slogans have been affecting the monarch of England as well, or the social life in England as well, which had been a profound influence on the life and the literature of all the Europe. On the continent, the overthrow of the Napoleon at Waterloo in 1815 apparently checked the progress of liberty, which had started with the French Revolution at that time. The agitation of the popular liberty, which at one time threatened a revolution, went steadily forward till it resulted in the final triumph of democracy. Means with all these conflicts, the following reformations have been seen on the political scene as well, and in the social life of the England as well. So out of those reformations, one was the triumph of democracy, means for the rights of the public. In the reform bills of 1832, in the before 1832, the right to vote was not common to everyone. It was only specified with some landlords. So for the first time in 1832, it was extended to common men as well. And in the number of exceeding important reforms, there were many other reforms as well. Not only there was the reform bill, such as the extension of manhood suffrage, the removal of the last unjust restriction against Catholics, and establishment of the national system of schools, means schools were nationalized, followed by a rapid increase in the popular education and abolition of the slavery in all English colonies. These have been the other developments at the time. So this we see that education was going to be extended as a right to everyone. We must add the changes produced by the discovery of the steam means steam engine, and the invention of the machinery, which rapidly changed England from the agriculture to a manufacturing nation, introduced the factory system, and caused this period to be known as the age of industrial revolution as well. So we see that the society at that time was expanding. With this, yeah, society was moving at great speed from its conventional mode of production and thinking to a revolutionized mode of economy and revolutionized mode of thinking as well. Means, from agricultural to, it was going to be transformed into a corporate society, factory system, and educational right, which was just already privileged to some particular classes, that was going to be extended to everyone. Similarly, means there was a shift of mode in the society thinking, modes of production, means economy, and all the other. Similarly, it affected the poetry as well, and means the literature as well. The literature of the age is largely poetical in form and almost entirely romantic in spirit. In that, when there was, the cities were expanding, man was going to be too much busy. Man was, at the same time, man was going away from the and nature as well. So in that age, poets thought that man is going to lose his soul, as he was all these romantics have been lamenting the loss of innocence of the man, as he has been in the villages or in the towns. So cities were more crushing for the modern man. Therefore all these romantic poets have been lamenting that loss of innocence, and they have been calling back man towards the nature and the village life. As for we have noted, the triumph of democracy in the government is generally accompanied by the triumph of the romantics in literature. At first, the literature was shown, especially in the early works of Wordsworth, Byron, and Shelley, reflected the turmoil of the age. That was basically a disturbed situation. Means Wordsworth not only takes that man should come back to the nature, man should close live to nature. Actually, they were lamenting, they were focusing on the turmoil of the age. Means man was disturbed, where to go, in which way to proceed forward, and the wild hopes of an ideal democracy occasioned by the French Revolution. What the French Revolution has raised in their slogans, that was ultimately failed, as its slogan was equality, fraternity, and justice to everyone, but it could not provide. French Revolution ultimately failed. Later, the extravagant enthusiasm subsided, and English writers produced as much excellent literature. That age is often called as the second creative period. Means we almost divide the romantic period into two periods. Means early romantics, and then the later are the second creative period of romantics. Means that was the by the end of this, means Wordsworth, Byron, Shelley, they belongs to the second. They were more political, they were more social, they were more reactionary to the society, while the early romantics were more just focusing on the themes of nature. So if we count that there are the six characteristics of this age by which we can determine the significance of this age. One was the prevalence of the romantic poetry, means in this age the romantic tendency of the poetry means from here I would be explaining that romantic never means a romantic was are rebellious, are breaking the tradition from the classical patterns, both in the themes and the form. Means if in the classical poetry there might be the supernatural themes, might be the theme of the god, theme of the heaven, and they have set, means like Milton and other poets, they Alexander Pope as well, they have some set some particular meters and the forms in the form of poetry and the thinking as well. But romantic poetry was a reaction against those forms of poetry and those forms of thinking. And before this, the classical poetry was taking some themes of poetry as well, and they were just mean that they might be the beloved, that they might be the heroes of some war, while over here in romantic poetry they have just focused on the common man themes of that might be a daffodil, that might be a cuckoo, and that might be Lucy Gray, who is a common girl, she's living in a countryside. Therefore with this romantic tendency was very much common in this age. The creation of the historical novel by Scott was considered as the historical novelist. So for the first time we see the historical novel in fiction. The first appearance of the woman novelist, that's very important. As you know, rights were going to be extended to every common man, and the same case was with the women were not even a right to vote up to 1928. So in this new tendency, I would may call it as a period of new tendency, we see the appearance of the women such as Miss Annie Radcliffe, Jane Porter, Mary Edgeworth, and Jane Austen. And then the development of literary criticism as well, means Wordsworth himself was a critic as well, and Lamb was there, De Quincey, Coleridge, Hazlitt. So that they have focused up on particular tendency of criticism, and they mold new trends in literature as well. They were introducing a new perception and concepts in criticism as well, and in the poetry. And then the practical and economic bent of philosophy, such as shown in the works of Malthus, James Mill, and Adam Smith, means there were new thoughts, new modes, means as life was changing from barter system to a currency and a coin system. So therefore there have been the economic theories as well and economic philosophies as well, and those economic philosophies theories have changed the world at large. And then there we see the establishment of great literary magazines like the Edinburgh Review, the Quarterly, Blackwood, and Athenaeum. All these have been the very literary developments. Magazines were there. So if we see that as I have talked already, that it starts from the 1790 Romanticism. In that germination of this movement, the name of William Black is, though ignored one, though unheard one to the every student of English literature, but he was the most important poet who gave air to this romantic tendency in English poetry. From William Black, Wordsworth, Coleridge, and they all have been very important, and his book The Song of Experience and Innocence, they have been a very important books. And he might be the forefather, he might be the forerunner of this romantic tendency, romantic movement, romantic period. So we discuss William Black. He was the Burns contemporary. Burns was another poet, but had none of his success. Means William Black would not. Actually, his sister was diseased, and she was the patient of leprosy, and therefore he never got married. He always take care of her. Uh, Therefore, he could not enjoy success. But he grew up poor in London. Went to the art school. Was apprenticed to an engraver at 14, and lived by the engraving means painting. His fine teenage poetical sketches were printed but not published due to his poverty. He engraved his later poems by his own laborious method, hand coloring each copy of the little books in which he published them. Means he himself was used to write those poems. Eventually, his art gained him a few admirers, notably by the painter Samuel Palmer. Limited of his admirers was. Blake had begun his songs of innocence with the hark to the voice of the bird. But the age did not hearken to his truly means heavenly taught genius. He was very heavenly taught genius, but uh, unluckily, sadly, he could not get that fame. He was self-educated and misunderstood. People were not so educated, and they were, as you know, everyone who for the first time set a new tradition, he is always misunderstood. Same was the case with William Black. As he was introducing new tendency of English poetry, therefore he was misunderstood. He opposed the ruling intellectual orthodoxies, political, social, sexual, and ecclesiastical, with a marked contempt to deist materialist, Consortius priest, and the president of the Royal Academy. So, as he was very revolutionary, as a revolutionary who briefly shared Milton's hope that paradise might be restored by politics, he came to be regarded as the political radicals. His allies, a blind rational materialist, mock on the mock, and Voltaire, Rousseau, mock on, it's all in vain. These are the lines from them. You throw the sand against the wind. Uh, Means if you throw the wind against throw the sand against the wind, then definitely it would be coming to your own eyes, and the wind threw it back again. For Black, human reality was political, spiritual, and divine. He has been focusing on all these aspects. A material ideal of advancement showed single vision, the Newton sleep. All these have been at that time struggling. The religious visionary driven by deism to the unorthodox extremes. Blake was also, unlike most mystics, a satirical ironist. Means he has been challenging all these established orthodoxies, and a master of the savage aphorisms in the marriage of heaven and hell. This was his famous book. Black's Songs of Experience, which he wrote in 1794, contains what has become his most celebrated poems, such as The Sick, The Rose, The Tiger. We would be discussing the tiger in our next video. The London which begins. This is from there. I wander through each chartered street, near where the chartered Thames does flow, and mark in every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of woe. Means he sees that every people was scary, every people was, though they were weak, but they were ever angry to other men, to him as well. Black uses rhythmical quatrains of Isaac Watts' Divine for the Children, repeating and twisting. This shows basically, repetition and twisting the word sounds to make the discord with the childhood. Basically, show the disturbance in the society, show the disturbance in the poet's mind. Poet was not suitable in that society. He was not even, when a child comes to the a lot of confusion of the word, so he asks a lot of questions, and repeatedly he asks the same questions. So when we read, when read, he was not understood. Wordsworth later said about him that there was no doubt that this poor man was mad. Actually, he was saying about uh, William Black. But if the your society means if your society is moving with a great speed than the your speed of thinking, then definitely it is going to affect you. Might be feel horrified. So that was the situation. He was thinking quite in a different way, while the society was indulged in its orthodoxies, and he was facing such great resistance from those orthodoxies. But there is something in that madness of this man which interests me more. These are the words, powerful, are great, mighty words of Wordsworth about William Black, that he's of the view that which interests me more than the sanctity of the Lord Byron and Walter Scott. In the time of the French Revolution, there were many who saw the signs that the judgment of the apocalypse was at the hand, but Blake was isolated and his thought was ecstatic. What did he drew an unfamiliar theological traditional biblical prophecy. Means at that time William Black was questioning the biblical tradition as well, theological tradition as well. uh, Black's thoughts evolved in his later prophetic books, often inverting conventional religious values in a way deriving from 18th century historical tradition of the reserved perspective. Like these orthodox conventional religious values never, make man to not to think in scientific terms, not to think out of those bounds set by the that conventional religious values. Thus, Milton's God's the Father is parodized as the old nobody aloft who fretted and bleached and coughed. Definitely, as Milton has been thinking, so he has been coughed, belched, farted. He was even resisted at that time. He invented new and complex myths with allegorical strands of the meaning. Scholarship has made by the later Blake less obscure, means what he has set out that was later on more explicitly said by Wordsworth, Keats, Coleridge, and all these. But it will never communicate as other romantic poetry does. If Keats can never fully unlock these prophetic myths of political and sexual liberation, yet lightning can strike from their most impenetrable clouds. A brief history cannot do justice to Blake's later work, which is a study in itself. Black illustrated a book by Mary Wollstonecraft, the indomitable author of The Vindication of the Rights of the Woman. As we have been talking that there was the voice for the rights of the woman, so this book, The Vindication for the Rights of the Woman, in 1972, 1792, was the very much influential book. Usually feminist thoughts in the feminist criticism, this starts with the study of this book. Who married the radical social philosopher William Godwin. He was the author of an inquiry concerning political injustice and a programmatic Gothic novels, means Gibbs Williams. Uh, she was the wife, Mary Wollstonecraft, the wife of Godwin, and she gave birth. She herself died during the birth of means Mary Shelley. She was the wife of the Shelley, and who is the author of Frankenstein. Godwin's belief that the humanity, since it was reasonable, could have been made perfect by the rational persuasion, persuaded many in early 1970s. Therefore, 1790s. Therefore, we start with the infusion of this sense of belief of humanity as Godwin has introduced. So, therefore, as it was much in the spheres of discussion in the 1790s, therefore we take the start of the Romantic period from 1790s. So what was particular in it, that was the subjectivity. Actually, Before this, the orthodoxies have been more objective and universalized. Same was the case of the poetry. But what with this infusion of the romantic tendency, there came the elements of subjective truth, subjective forms in the poetry, subjective themes have been introduced in the poetry. So now we are going to discuss these. The ingredients of romantic sensibility has existed before 1798, as I have already talked about, that though people usually starts it from the 1798, but it has been existed before. But the new poets found it as an authentic voice, touch, and intensity. The novel elements in the lyrical ballads were defined and given impetus by the preface Wordsworth, added in 1800 completely. The quality and the impact of the best poems were such that the lyrical poetry and imaginative literature were permanently altered, especially by the new emphasis on the subjective experience. Before this, in the traditional poetry, imagination and the lyric form of poetry means traditionalists before this are the classic poetry were more focusing on the lyric form of poetry and imaginative. They were of the view that if the poetry is not lyric and if it's not imagination, it's not the poetry and it's not the literature in any sense. While these romantics were of the view that poetry is more a subjective. It might break the lyric form as well. It might not be so imaginative as has been emphasized by the classics. So this subjectivity is exemplified in the famous poem of Wordsworth lyric. We would be determining the elements that how it should be. She dwelt among the untrodden ways. Untrodden ways are those who are already practiced one, from where the people moves. So untrodden ways are the new one, are the subjective one, are the may call it new one. So beside the springs of the dove, so it cannot be focused on the singular mighty objects. It might be on a dove to a common theme, a maid whom there was none to praise. So Wordsworth is of the view that modern poetry is like a maid who has no praise, admirers, or none of any existing one praise him, and that is very few to love. I mean, there are that cannot be lovely to everyone. There are few to love. A violent by moissy stone. So she it might be means the modern poetry is like a golden color flower, violet, but that might be hidden besides a mossy stone. So half hidden from the eye, definitely it is open, but everyone cannot see it. Fair as a star, but only one is shining in the sky. She lived unknown and few could know. When Lucy ceased to be, as he's talking about the Lucy, but at the same time he's more focusing on the form of new tendency of the poetry as well. When Lucy ceased to be, but she is in her grave. Oh, the difference to me. He says that it is quite different to me. For example, the ending illustrate a principle of preface that in these poems, the feeling therein developed gives importance to the situation and not the situation to the feeling. This is too easy. That they were giving importance to the situation, not to the situation of feeling. Means, for example, if I feel good with the daffodils, that is the situation. So that is important rather than the feeling. So this inverts the Augustinian idea that literature's object is just presentation of the journal nature. So what did they? They said it's more your subjective tendency. If you feel okay, if you feel good with something, that's okay. While the Augustinian literature or the classic literature was focusing on the representation of the objects through words. If it is mighty, if it is with embellished language, making great and high themes, then it's okay and it would be poetry. If it is imaginative, it is lyric in the form, it is focusing on the larger themes. It is appealing to everyone, means a universal appeal they have, then they would call it as the literature. While the romantic poetry was of the focus that it would might be appealing to you and some other one, they would be the limited, that your approach might be subjective, your meaning might be limited, but that is more suitable rather than the artificial use of imagination and the language and the lyric poetry as well. The comic impulse of the 18th century also recedes. Had Pope written these lines, these are the lines over here above, irony might have been suspected by the social irony that has no place in the Wordsworth graveside manner. Lines from Gray's elegy approach Wordsworth's position. These are the lines. Full many a flower is born to bloom unseen, and waste its sweetness on the desert air. Means flowers are there, but as we are unable to see that, so their beauty and the sweetness is wasted in the desert air. Gray's churchyard lies between the London and the lakes, where the half-hidden violet and the first star planet, means Venus, can be seen. And yet it takes the poet's eye to a Lucy and a poetic reader to respond. The poet is becoming a special interpreter of special truths. This is very important. Poet is not interpreter of a general truth according to Wordsworth, according to the romantic poets, their conception of poetry, that poet is a special interpreter of special truths to a special reader, and not of the general truths to the common reader. This relationship is more personal and can be deeper and more intense than it was replaced by the rhyme on the oh. Therefore, he says oh means he was introducing a new tendency. It can also be more risky. As poetry became more subjective, literature began to be defined as imaginative. So thus the post-romantic prose of the Carlyle and of Ruskin, Newmans and the Peters is more literary than the rational prose of J.S. Mill, which means one can be imaginative in his own sense, one can be literary in his own sense, other than the creating logic, creating imagination, and practicing on the old traditions, which relies less on the rhyme and imagery. In fiction too, the keynote is often set by imaginative natural description, as in the novels of Bronte. So that sort of imagination was imaginative, but in own personal sense. They were more focusing on the personal imagination of a poet. So we see in this that it was just breaking a breakdown from the standard norms, standard definition of imagination, standard definition of literature, standard definition of poet as the interpreter. In Augustan age, Augustan philosophy, a classic pattern, we may say that poet was a special interpreter with imaginative and lyric poetry to create a universal representation, universal sort of imagination to which might be common to everyone. While these romantic poets, they were imaginative, they were but in their own sense, they were they were literary, but they were rebellious of those mighty themes, mighty forms, mighty structural imaginative patterns. So therefore they introduced a very subjective approach to the things which were not explored earlier by the poets. With this, I seek permission from you. If you have any questions, you may ask me in the comment section. I would be available to answer those questions. Thank you very much.